What if the most fascinating figures from across time could meet for the first time in the hereafter, free to speak as they never could in life? Welcome to History's Afterlife. Tonight, two men who shaped the fate of Europe through decades of warfare find themselves in conversation. Napoleon Bonaparte, the Corsican artillery officer who crowned himself Emperor of the French, conquered most of continental Europe, and transformed how nations were governed. A man of boundless ambition and tactical genius who believed himself destiny's chosen agent. And Arthur Wellesley, the first Duke of Wellington, the Iron Duke, methodical and unflappable, who built his reputation in the hills of India before becoming Napoleon's nemesis across Spain and finally at Waterloo. Where Napoleon saw grand designs and revolutionary change, Wellington saw duty, order, and the careful preservation of what worked. Today, they meet without the thunder of cannon between them.
So, the Duke of Wellington. I confess, I have wondered what manner of man could prove so persistent in opposing me.
Bonaparte. I rather think persistence was required, given your own remarkable tenacity in disturbing the peace of Europe.
Disturbing the peace? I brought order to chaos, Wellington. I gave Europe laws, roads, rational administration. Before me, what was France but a feudal relic rotting under the weight of its own contradictions?
And what was it after you, I wonder? A continent soaked in blood and a France smaller than when you began. Though I grant you this, your legal code has proven more durable than your conquests.
You speak of blood as though you never spilled any. How many died in your Peninsular campaign? How many at Waterloo?
I take no pleasure in casualties, I assure you. But there is a difference between defending one's country and setting out to remake the world according to one's personal vision.
Wellington's dispatches from the Peninsula reveal his genuine distress at the cost of war. After Waterloo, he wrote to a friend, "I always say, next to a battle lost, the greatest misery is a battle gained." Yet he also believed deeply in duty, a concept Napoleon understood differently, if at all.
Personal vision? I was the instrument of history itself, Wellington. The revolution had begun the work of sweeping away the old world. I completed it. You fought to preserve a system that kept millions in chains.
I fought to prevent any one man from holding all of Europe in chains. Your rational administration looked remarkably like tyranny from where we stood.
And your rational administration looked remarkably like allowing the sons of lords to purchase commissions in your army, while better men remained privates. At least I promoted on merit.
You promoted on loyalty to yourself, which you chose to call merit. Though I won't defend the purchase system, it was indeed an absurdity, if a familiar one.
This touches something genuine in both men. Wellington had risen through the purchase system he privately despised, while Napoleon's meritocracy became increasingly hollow as he demanded personal loyalty above all else. Both would later reflect on the contradictions in their own positions.
You know, Wellington, at Waterloo, I watched you through my telescope, hour after hour, riding that bay horse of yours along your line, never hurried, never seeming to doubt. I envied you that.
Envied me? You, who conquered half of Europe?
You had something I spent my life trying to create. The absolute confidence of your men. Not their fear, not their ambition, but their trust. Your men believed you would not waste their lives.
And yet your men followed you across Russia. Your men followed you back from exile. What was that but trust?
That was something else. Love, perhaps, or glory-seeking, or simple habit, but not the quiet faith your soldiers showed. When they saw you ride out at Waterloo, they knew you would not ask them to die for nothing.
I knew the ground. I chose it carefully, as I always did. You attacked uphill, through mud, against prepared positions. It was, if I may say so, uncharacteristically direct of you.
I was eager. I thought speed might serve where subtlety had failed. And I confess, I underestimated you. I expected the old Wellington, who had proved so cautious in Spain.
I was never cautious, Bonaparte. I was careful. There's a difference.
Napoleon's mood of genuine reflection was rare, though not unprecedented, in exile. In his later years on St. Helena, he would often replay his battles, particularly Waterloo. He once said to an aide, "Wellington fought like a boxer who knows how to use his fists." Coming from Napoleon, this was extraordinary praise.
Tell me honestly, Wellington, did you ever doubt the outcome at Waterloo?
Every moment until the Prussians arrived. Your guard nearly broke my centre. Another hour without Blucher, and, well, we shall never know.
And if I had won? What then for Europe?
More war, inevitably. You could never have been content with France alone, could you?
Content? I was never made for contentment, Wellington. I was made to act, to build, to reshape the world closer to reason. Contentment is for cattle.
Or for men who understand that not everything requires reshaping. Some things, traditions, loyalties, old ways of doing things, they persist because they work, not because they're perfect.
And some things persist because no one has had the courage to change them. Your House of Lords, for instance. What rational purpose does it serve?
It serves to remind us that power should be exercised with restraint, that those who govern should have something to lose by governing badly.
A pretty theory. Yet, somehow you found yourself fighting wars for 20 years to preserve this restraint.
I fought wars for 20 years to prevent you from imposing your idea of reason on unwilling nations. The Spanish, the Germans, the Russians, they preferred their own muddle to your clarity.
Wellington had witnessed this firsthand in Spain, where he saw how the Spanish people experienced Napoleon's so-called rational administration, not as enlightened reform, but as foreign occupation. In a letter to his brother, Wellington wrote, "The French have made war a system of plunder. They have taught the world that moderation in war is imbecility."
The Spanish? Yes, that was my great error, wasn't it? I thought I could give them better government than their Bourbon kings. I thought they would welcome enlightenment.
You thought you could give them your government, whether they wanted it or not. That's rather different.
And yet, would Spain be better governed today if I had succeeded? Would their people be more prosperous, more educated?
Perhaps, but they would not be Spanish. You seem to forget, Bonaparte, that most men prefer their own folly to another man's wisdom.
Do they? Or do they simply fear change? You cannot deny that where I ruled, I abolished serfdom, opened careers to talent, rationalized the laws.
You did indeed. And you also conscripted their sons, taxed them to fund your wars, and shot those who disagreed with your improvements. Progress at the point of a bayonet is still tyranny.
Sometimes a bayonet is necessary to cut through the chains of custom. Your own country has made peaceful progress impossible for centuries in Ireland. At least I offered quick solutions.
Touché. Though I might point out that your quick solutions had a way of requiring more bayonets, not fewer.
This exchange reveals the fundamental divide between them. Napoleon's journal from St. Helena contains the line, "I am the revolution on horseback." Wellington might have replied that he was the Constitution on foot, slower perhaps, but more likely to reach its destination intact.
You know what puzzles me about you, Wellington? You are arguably the finest general of our age, yet you seem to take no joy in it.
Joy? In war? Good God, why should I?
The intellectual pleasure of the thing, the chess match of armies, the moment when you see your plan succeeding, the artistry of it.
I saw only the necessity of it. War is not an art, Bonaparte. It's a very bloody business, best finished as quickly and decisively as possible.
But surely you felt something when your line held at Waterloo, when you knew you had beaten me.
Relief. Enormous relief. And then I went to write letters to the families of men who had died for that victory.
Whereas I tried to kill myself. Did you know that? After my abdication, I took poison. It didn't work. The dose was too old, I think. I woke up the next morning still alive, still myself.
I'm sorry to hear that. I wouldn't have wished such despair on any man, even you.
Would you have done differently in my position? If everything you had built crumbled in a day?
I hope I would have remembered that there are worse things than failure. Despair, for instance. The belief that one man's life is the measure of all things.
This moment of vulnerability from Napoleon was rare but not unprecedented. At St. Helena, he confided to Count Lascasse, "I have always believed that my star would guide me. When it abandoned me, I found I had forgotten how to live without it."
You speak as a man who has never doubted his purpose.
I have doubted everything at one time or another. My judgment, my courage, my right to command other men. But I have never doubted that some things are worth preserving, even imperfectly.
And I have never doubted that most things need changing, however painful the process. We are complementary forces, I think. You preserving, me transforming.
Perhaps. Though I would argue that my approach proved more durable.
Your approach had the luxury of time, Wellington. Mine had to act quickly or not at all. History gave you the opportunity to be careful. It demanded that I be bold.
History demanded nothing. You chose boldness because you preferred it to patience. I chose patience because I preferred it to rashness. We are not fate's puppets, Bonaparte. We are men who made choices.
Choices, yes, but within circumstances neither of us created. You were born into a world where gradual reform was possible. I was born into a world that required a revolution.
Was it revolution that required you to make yourself emperor? To place your brothers on the thrones of Europe? That seems less like historical necessity and more like personal ambition.
Napoleon had systematically placed his family members as rulers across his empire. Joseph as King of Spain, Louis as King of Holland, Jerome as King of Westphalia. What Napoleon saw as ensuring reliable governance, his enemies viewed as naked nepotism.
Personal ambition in service of larger principles. I needed authority to implement change. Republics are too slow, too divided. Sometimes progress requires a single will.
And sometimes a single will becomes an end in itself, rather than a means to progress.
In their final years, both men grappled with this question of legacy versus ambition. Wellington, growing old in a changing Britain, wrote to a friend, "I have no small talk, and Peel has no manners," referring to Sir Robert Peel, his political contemporary. Napoleon, dying on St. Helena, dictated to Las Cases, "What is the throne? A bit of wood covered with velvet. But the idea lives forever."
Tell me, Wellington, looking back, do you think either of us truly understood what we were fighting for? Beyond the immediate tactics, I mean.
I understood perfectly well. I was fighting to prevent any single power from dominating Europe. You were fighting to, well, what were you fighting for exactly?
I was fighting for the future, Wellington. For a Europe based on reason rather than accident of birth.
And yet your Europe would have been unified under your crown. How is that different from the old dynasties you claimed to oppose?
Because I earned my position. Because I represented merit, not inheritance.
You represented yourself, Bonaparte. Whatever your initial principles, by the end you were fighting simply to maintain Napoleon Bonaparte in power.
Perhaps. But even if that's true, at least I was fighting for something that endures. My legal code still governs France today, Wellington. It has spread to dozens of nations. That is achievement, not mere ambition.
The Napoleonic Code, formerly the Civil Code of 1804, remains the foundation of French law and has influenced legal systems across Europe, Latin America and beyond. Its principles of legal equality, property rights and civil liberties represented a revolutionary break from feudal law, even as Napoleon himself grew increasingly autocratic.
You were fighting merely to preserve the status quo.
I was fighting to preserve the right of nations to choose their own model over your imposed perfection. That seems grand enough to me.
Imposed perfection? Wellington, I brought legal equality where there had been feudal privilege. I opened careers to merit where birth had been everything. If that is imposition, then so be it. Some improvements cannot wait for unanimous consent.
And yet, the moment you fell, half of Europe rose in celebration. Perhaps that tells us something about the difference between improvement and imposition.
They celebrated because they feared change, not because my changes were wrong. History will vindicate me, Wellington. My code, my schools, my roads, they will outlast the memory of Waterloo.
Perhaps time will tell, though I suspect your roads and schools will be remembered more fondly than your wars.
You give me too little credit for the wars, and too much for the administration. But I'll take it. Your own victories were hardly small achievements. Methodical, yes, but remarkable. You understood logistics better than any general I knew.
High praise from the man who marched an army to Moscow.
Yes, well, that particular march rather proved your point about logistics, didn't it?
Russia taught you what I learned fighting in Spain against French occupation. that the most difficult enemy to defeat is a country that refuses to admit it has been conquered.
And yet, if I had to choose between your career and mine, I think I would choose mine again. The failures along with the successes.
Even knowing the cost?
Even knowing the cost. Better to have tried to remake the world and failed than never to have tried at all.
Whereas I would choose mine. To have helped preserve what was worth keeping, even if I could not improve all that needed improvement.
And perhaps this is where they must remain. These two giants who bestrode their age. Napoleon, the revolutionary who dreamed of remaking humanity, but forgot that humans might object. Wellington, the conservative who preserved much that was valuable, but perhaps too little that was just. Neither man's vision was complete, but Europe was forged in the tension between them. In the end, both were servants of their time, though they served in different fashions, one as its sword, the other as its shield.
Bonaparte. I find myself curious about one thing. Do you regret anything?
Everything and nothing, Wellington. I regret the suffering I caused, but not the necessity that caused it. I regret my failures, but not my attempts. And you?
I regret that so much was necessary. The wars, the deaths, the years of conflict. But I do not regret doing what seemed right with the information I possessed at the time.
A soldier's answer. Clean, practical, unadorned by sentiment.
And yours was a philosopher's answer. Grand contradictions that somehow resolve themselves into certainty.
In life, they met only once, on the field at Waterloo, separated by mud and smoke and the width of a battlefield. Here, in this imagined conversation, they meet as equals, two architects of the modern world still debating the blueprints. Their Europe is long gone, reshaped by forces neither could have imagined. But their argument continues in every generation that must choose between the courage to change and the wisdom to preserve, between the dream of perfection and the reality of human nature. Perhaps that is legacy enough.